Conservatives are calling out the Pulitzer for awarding journalists who reported on Russian collusion in the 2016 election in the wake of the Durham report, which has found that the FBI should not have launched a probe into the issue, or at least the evidence they used to springboard that was not persuasive. Florida Republican Byron Donalds tweeted, "Ready to give your Pulitzer back now?" in response to a Washington Post tweet from 2018 promoting their coverage of the so-called Trump-Russia collusion.
Back in December of 2022, former President Donald Trump sued the Pulitzer Prize Board for defamation, arguing its statement by the group that concluded a review conducted of previous claims he made defamed him. Writer for Jacobin Branko Marcetic tweeted, "Similar to the original laptop story, the bigger scandal of this House report is not so much the corruption, sadly endemic in U.S. politics, and which Biden's family has a long record of, but the media's decision to pretend it's not happening / newsworthy."
Yeah, as I remarked in our earlier coverage of this, it is just incredible to me to reflect back on a time not so long ago in U.S. political history, 5 years ago, the 2016, 2017, 2018. I think that's really when Russiagate reached its fever pitch. A time when it was just this constant refrain from the mainstream media that Trump-Russia collusion was so self-evident, had been so handily proven that there was a deliberate effort by Russia to make Trump president, that it particularly was in effect in social media, that was the defining factor of the U.S. 2016 election, that it was stolen from Hillary Clinton, that there was something illegitimate or even rigged about it, that she didn't win because of what Russia had done, the Trump campaign was aware of and participated in it. That was the refrain. You heard it from all these media outlets, and people won awards for picking at those threads and trying to elucidate them for the public. They won journalism prizes for that. And I think this is totally fair to look back at that reporting, which again was awarded, was celebrated by a panel of journalistic experts, and said, yes, this is the thing we want to celebrate this year, the great work exposing this web of corruption and connection that we now know just does not have the basis in reality. Yes, Russia wanted Trump to win. Yes, it made some kind of ham-fisted efforts to sow division in U.S. Discourse, just like everyone else was doing, just like the Clinton campaign was doing and the Trump campaign was doing. They were trying to influence you on social media and cable news and everywhere else. Some Russian actors participated in that effort on social media. These efforts were seen by a small number, a sliver of voters. It was not at all uniquely individually targeted to these swing voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio. It is to compare it to what the candidates themselves were doing and saying, to what cable news and talk radio were doing on behalf of those candidates for 24 hours every day. It's just nuts to say, oh, that was the thing. That's what got people.
Yeah. So remember, what the Durham report says is that while some of the stuff that was floating around, Steele dossier or whatever, might have been enough to provoke an initial investigation, there was not enough information following that investigation to justify launching a probe. There was no justification to launching a probe, yet the character of the reporting was very much a kind of informal probe-style deep dive that apparently did not discover the flimsiness of information that the FBI apparently realized made it so that there was no there. There was no justification for even a further investigation in the eyes of the FBI, according to this report. But our intrepid reporters seemingly did not realize that. There was very little, even when it became clear the Steele dossier was a nothing burger, there was a real gap between the enthusiasm with which it was initially reported and follow-up reporting explaining that it wasn't true. And there are people today who believe that there's a P-tape and breathless hope that something like that is going to materialize, et cetera.
One of these days.
So for these Pulitzer prizes to have been awarded for that kind of reporting, which is now revealed to be the opposite of investigative reporting, it does tarnish the institution. I did a quick Google to see if there was any kind of precedent for withdrawing a Pulitzer Prize. Apparently back in '81, there was a feature writing prize for a Post reporter that was withdrawn after she admitted that her story was made up. So apparently it's a thing that happens. And again, it's not clear what the specific prizes were awarded for story-wise. It could be stories that were inclusive of, but not solely about the Russia collusion such that there was still something of journalistic merit and value there. Who knows? But certainly people like Ted Cruz, who are upset about this, I think are justified. He tweeted, disgraceful. Obama Biden officials and the corrupt corporate media pushed these piles of lies for years. Accountability now, starting with Washington Post and the New York Times, returning their Pulitzer Prizes for breathlessly spreading these Russia lies.
And it's not hyperbole to say they were doing that. It was breathless. It was constant.
Yeah.
It was constant for years. And there was just no self-reflection. I don't know what captivated the mainstream media about this narrative so much. Was it a kind of James Bond or 24, like it had a narrative like, oh, Russia, the Manchurian president, that was the intriguing part of it?
I have a theory, and I've taken this somewhat from my former colleague Nathan Robinson at Current Affairs Magazine. He wrote a prescient article early in 2016 that predicted Trump's win. And part of his argument was that if the Democratic Party nominates Hillary Clinton, she is uniquely poorly situated to call out what the worst things about Donald Trump are in terms of his embeddedness with Wall Street, his corruption, et cetera, because she was subject to the exact same types of criticism. So throughout that entire primary race, you couldn't get her really digging about the sexual misconduct of Donald Trump either, because she had her whole Bill Clinton baggage. Point for point, the most vulnerable aspects of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton couldn't touch because she was vulnerable at the same time. And obviously, Nathan's case was that Bernie did not have those vulnerabilities. He was the perfect person to call out corporate corruption and be a real populist in contrast to Trump, and you can feel how you feel about that. But I do think there's something to the fact that because Hillary was limited in the ways that she could attack Trump substantively, it became this shell game of talking about his the cultural aspect of Trump and the rude things he said and the racism and all of those kinds of things, as opposed to, is he going to live up to his promises? Is he who he's saying he is? Is he someone who's really unbothered and unbossed and someone who can really drain the swamp? Hillary didn't have a leg to stand on when it comes to who's more likely to drain the swamp. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's part of why we didn't get the more substantive journalism and critiques, and why people were so happy to find an excuse to go after Trump like this, Russia.
Well, and then we should talk about Hillary's own complicity in this. She was a sore loser, and then 4 years later, Donald Trump was the king of sore losers, so,
Sure.
Fair enough. But and it's interesting how she leaned into this, not to the degree Trump did, and saying the whole thing was illegitimate and, pointing to stuffed ballot boxes that don't exist, that kind of thing. But she did use stolen election rhetoric to describe Russian malfeasance here.
Yeah.
That's what she pointed to as the reason for her loss. She owned no responsibility. She did not talk about her disastrous campaign, which failed to invest in these swing states that decided the election. She did not visit them enough. She did not actively campaign in them. She did not try to reassure the Bernie supporting Rust Belt, working class union people who clearly saw something in Donald Trump that she would be their candidate. She wrote them off. In fact, she had unkind things to say about them. She thought there'd be enough millennials, and there were. I mean, she won the popular vote, but that doesn't matter. You have to win the Electoral College by playing the game as it's laid out, and she refused to do that. It's so obvious in retrospect. It should have been obvious going into it that was her vulnerability. That was the failure, but she didn't. That reflects on the candidate and her campaign manager, the evil Robby Mook. And instead of the self-criticism, they reached for this Russia did it narrative. And because, I don't know, she has some friends in media. Obviously, she's been treated badly by the media in some contexts.
Sure.
But the media, they took that walk with her. They took that journey with her.
Yeah, I'm reminded by this. Her margin of loss in Wisconsin, I think it was like 20-odd thousand votes.
Yeah, it was 60,000 votes across three states.
The country. This is from a story that came out
in those three states specifically. Yeah,
there were 88,000 black voters in Wisconsin who voted in 2012 who did not vote in 2016. And I would argue it's not because they were indifferent to Trump or racism or they were privileged or any of the arguments that were circulating in the wake of Hillary's loss. And it certainly wasn't because there were Russian agents. Although the FBI investigating the African Socialist People Party might have something different to say about that. But no, it's because Hillary Clinton didn't respond to criticism she was getting from the black community, the super predator comments, all of that. She thought she was above the fray. And she thought she could will and Russiagate her way into victory. It didn't work. And she and the Democratic Party still are dodging accountability for it.
Yeah. People in Pennsylvania voted Obama, Trump. And they didn't do it because of Russia.
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow on Rising, we'll be back for our full review of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. What if I just spent the whole show talking about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom? Tell me in the comments if you'd be comfortable with that. Briahna can just sit there and absorb the things I have to say about it. That would be a show, let me tell you.
I'll Google it. Maybe I'll find somebody's console to play around before I come in tomorrow so I can be informed and prepared.
Come over. That'd be a fun time.
Right. We'll live stream it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the move, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you later, guys.
See you tomorrow.